casual conversations about art and business. Today we are going to talk about Patreon success stories. I can't wait. But we do have to wait. That is, if you are joining us live on YouTube, we are going to start the conversation with these incredible artists in less than 3 minutes. It just gives everyone a chance to join and see all those alerts on Instagram and YouTube and so forth, and make sure that they are here with us. But if you are watching the replay on YouTube, or if you are listening to the replay on YouTube podcast, then feel free to skip ahead and the conversation starts 3 minutes in. Can't wait. See you there. Hey, I'm Harmony. I'm a watercolor artist, and I'm the host of this show, Harmony and Friends, Casual Conversations about Art and Business. This is our 10th episode. I can't believe it. And we have 3 incredible artists on today to talk to you about Patreon. Now, while I tell you a bit about that, I do have a question for you watching live, and that's whether you actually are subscribed right now to any artist's Patreon, whether they're here today or not. And if yes, to whom? And actually, bonus, why don't you let us know what you love about their Patreon? All right, so Patreon, I don't actually have one as the host, but this is what I think it is. This is what I've gathered. So I think it is a membership platform that picks up on the age-old idea of having patrons of the art, of having basically someone, you know, back then it was very, very rich, you know, kings and queens, let's say, or very old wealth type of families who would basically sponsor an artist so that they could create these incredible works of art. And now we have this digital membership version that allows you to create tiers and define within them exactly what your patrons are getting in exchange for that patronage. So whether that be something that you physically mail out, or it is, you know, time spent together online, these artists have different ideas and have really established a thriving Patreon setup. So I can't wait to hear from them. With that, let's welcome them and get everyone up here. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
There you are. Thank you for joining. I think we're going to jump right in because we actually have lots of people watching and they are so interested in hearing from you. So Emma, if it's okay, I'll pick on you there at the top of the screen. Could you give us like a 1 to 2 minute introduction about yourself, your art business for anyone who doesn't know you yet?
Yeah, so hi, my name's Emma. There's loads of you in the chat who I recognise, so hello if you're watching as well. I'm an illustrator. I don't know, like I'm an illustrator. I do a bit of everything, bit of art as well, like an artist. I picture books as well. I used to be a lecturer, but I was able to give it up because of Patreon, so like that's amazing. And yeah, just lots of stuff. That's really bad.
That's beautiful. No, that's sometimes the goal of the life of an artist, right? That you can create or express your creativity in different ways. So that's beautiful that you found a way to make that happen. Thanks for joining. Harriet, how about you?
Well, hi. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name's Harriet de Winton, and I'm a watercolor artist. I run De Winton Paper Co., which kind of started off life as a wedding stationery business and has just transformed over the years, largely down to things like Patreon, YouTube. We really pivoted in the pandemic when I'd been doing in-person workshops, and then we obviously moved it all online and started that YouTube channel, and it was amazing because we were able to have the time. So I keep saying we because it's very much a partnership with my husband. He's on behind the camera. I'm very lucky that he edits it all for me. But yeah, so we've sort of got into Patreon a few months after starting YouTube. Actually, it was Emma Carlisle who saw you doing it. I was like, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I thought, right, this sounds really good. And yeah, so I'm so excited to talk about it today because there are so many like unexpected wonderful bonuses that have come from starting it. I didn't even know were like for me as a watercolor artist just doing it at home in the office. So yeah, we're based in Devon, not far from Emma, and yeah, we're just really enjoying creating and putting it out in the world at the moment.
Look at that, Emma. You're already inspiring, you know, before we're even getting started on this live stream. But thank you for sharing, Harriet. That's so impressive what you've built in this short period of time too. And man, a support system that makes all the difference. So thanks for sharing that as well, because it's, I think, important to know what your setup is. Thank you. Emily, how about you?
Hi. Yes, I'm Emily. I am also an illustrator. My background is in animation, actually. So I worked in the animation industry for quite a few years and absolutely loved working in the animation industry. But in 2018, I was working for a studio and it was going really well. But I found out I was pregnant, which was great. But what happened was my work contract ended and then I went into labor 2 weeks later. So I had a little baby and no job. And yeah, Patreon was a lifesaver for me with a new baby. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but I sort of launched my Patreon like the November of the year he was born, and it's grown from there really. But yeah, I was able to leave my animation. I couldn't go back to that because the hours are very long with a little baby. So it's freed me, basically. It's been amazing.
Wow. Well, that is an inspiring story right there. Thank you so much for sharing. Wow. That you must have felt so nervous. I'm just like getting over this. Just like here's a baby and you're unemployed. Congratulations.
I look back and think I was crazy. Wow. You know, hindsight is
impressive stuff. So I would love to hear more about those details. What we're going to do right now for everybody, we have this little round of questions that's basically setting the scene. So again, for everyone who's watching to understand what is your current situation with Patreon, this isn't necessarily about advice yet. You know, this is just, hey, what are your steps, so to say? So with that, I'm going to ask this question because we are interested in art business and art business income streams. So, Emily, I'll start with you, going backwards.
Yes.
What kind of art business do you have, and what other income streams do you have from your art besides Patreon?
Yeah, so I do have the Patreon, and then I also have an online shop. So I sell a lot of products, stationery, pins, things like that. I have a YouTube channel as well, which is, it's still an income stream. It's very small, but it's still an income stream. But I would say the two main ones are my Patreon and then my online shop website / Etsy. I do a bit of both. So yeah.
I love it. And your Instagram, it's like lilac everywhere. I love it.
I do love a bit of lilac. Yeah.
Just a tiny bit. It's
Yeah.
great. Thanks for sharing. Harriet?
So yeah, very similar to Emily, actually. YouTube was where it began. So that is probably the largest audience we find. And then, but it's actually one of the lower like earners from ad revenue
Really?
in itself. But it's amazing that it sends you that large audience off to all the other things you want to share with them. So one thing I didn't mention in the intro is I've written 3 books, watercolor tutorial books that have also been like a large part of sort of the business growing and income stream. So so from the book point of view, I also sell those and lots of like art supplies. Paintbrush is probably the big thing for me. So we sell those on our web shop on Etsy, amongst other things. Patreon obviously is an income stream. And then I still do really enjoy doing wedding stationery designs, but I sort of much more choosy with that. And I guess the other thing is doing quite a lot of like sponsored content with brands that I like to work with on YouTube in particular.
Very cool. And you're about to hit 100K, right? 100,000
Oh my goodness,
subscribers.
maybe in the next hour. So if anyone wants to go and subscribe on YouTube, I think we're like 70 off. So that would be a big one, wouldn't it?
Oh, wow.
If anyone wants to go,
well done, Harriet. If you do pop off, come back. Okay, thank you. Emma, what about you?
Yeah, so I have an online shop as well. I'm awful at promoting myself. Like, I think I'm the worst. I can't do it like at all. Like, there's nothing in me that wants to be like, go buy my stuff. So I have an online shop with like prints in, and I launched my sketchbook books last year. So it's like a collection of all my drawings from the last like of Devon and Cornwall. And then I did a New Zealand one as well. So that was really cool to be able to do that. But Patreon is my main income now. So like that is the biggest earner. I don't do YouTube. Like I've got 700 followers on YouTube, and I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. But now I'm really embarrassed because like
it's hard. I feel like, just this is a total aside, but I think a YouTube subscriber, like it kind of takes a lot to get someone to subscribe or to then watch your videos, even if they are subscribed, because it's a much bigger commitment. You know, it's not like a 3-second TikTok. It's like, okay, here's my 45-minute video. So that, and you know what? You don't need it. If you made Patreon work, we don't all need every single option. It's impossible to manage. So if you have something that's working for you and you work that hard to build it up, don't worry about YouTube.
Yeah, that is so true. Actually, my brain can't handle really focusing on more than Patreon, YouTube, and then from the social media side, like I can't really go beyond Instagram. Like I'm sure there's a whole world of opportunity for me on all the other platforms, but they just don't really speak to me. So I feel quite comfortable just keeping it simple, I think.
Yeah, you can't spread yourself too thin. I don't really think it's effective. I think you got to build each income stream. And I mean, you'll tell us later, but I assume that Patreon is a lot of work. So it's not that easy to have a ton of income streams. All right. So really quickly, when did you first start on Patreon as an artist? Anyone can jump in and just throw in a year.
Well, November 2019, I started. Yeah, so kind of just before the pandemic started. Wow. Yeah.
I was September 2020, having started YouTube May 2020.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
not
May
that long.
2020 because it's my 3rd year patron birthday next month, which is
Oh,
Wow.
happy birthday.
Wow. Oh, that's good to know. So you're all in that same range. Yeah. So also good to know. I'm interested to hear if there were any moments where you wanted to give up, or if it just kind of worked out from the beginning. But we'll get into that later. For now, mostly you can see this on the pages. I think you can hide the information, but I would be so happy if you share with everyone watching how many Patreon subscribers you currently have and what your monthly income is from Patreon. I don't care if you tell it before or after the fees or whatever. It's up to you, whatever figure you want to share.
oh, like
I'll go first. So what we'll say, if people don't know it, because it's the start of the month, you see a massive dip in your subscriber number.
Yeah,
So
that's
what
true.
happens is at the start of the month, you'll check your patrons and be like, oh my God, I've lost 50 of them.
Yeah.
You realize it's just them processing payments.
Ah.
I'll start. I am the lowest, so I'll start. I have, let me double check. I think about 330 patrons, something like that. Hang on, let me double. I don't want to double check actually. Yeah,
not today. Don't check today. Check next week.
It says 314 right now. That it was 330 yesterday, so maybe those people have dropped off.
And it'll definitely go back up, won't it?
Yeah, it usually does. I would say on average about 1,700 at the minute. At the height in the pandemic, it reached a peak, and I had 100 more patrons than I do now. And I was earning £1,000 more. So I've definitely seen a massive drop since the world's opened back up.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you for sharing.
I guess I'll go next because I'm the next one. I have got right now 666, which is a scary number.
Someone go sign up really quickly.
yeah, please. And I like average about $5,000 a month on it.
Wow.
Like, sort of, wiggles about, but about that much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got 878, but I mean that's dropped down even today. Like
you had
this morning.
Strange.
It's the start of the month, like, and if you do start a patron, like, please don't worry when I've called it the wrong thing already. If you start a Patreon, I've called it the wrong thing for 3 years, so now I've got to train myself to say Patreon. But if you start one, like, never worry about people leaving, because like Harriet said, they come back. Like, not they come back, but the numbers throughout the month. But I've got 878 at the moment, and I make about upwards of 6,000 a month from Patreon. But the fees, I mean, maybe we'll talk about fees later, but we're like,
I don't have a specific question about it, so feel free to clarify that, because if you don't have your own account, you have no idea how that works.
What percentage is it? I can never think, but it always feels like quite a chunk. Say, for example, if I'm earning about £5,000, I think the platform fees plus the other fees work out to be about like £700 if you're making about for £5,000 take back. But I don't know about the rest of you. I do. I use Patreon in what I think is a fairly simple manner, and I've always felt quite well supported, and I like the platform, and I sort of go, I feel that paying those fees is a sort of reassuring thing that I've got a good support network. But saying that, I don't know if the people,
you think it's worth
it very different ways,
right?
So it might be different for other people.
No, I agree. I'm somebody that obviously earns a little bit less, and I think I don't know if is it the more patrons you have, do you pay a smaller percentage in fees? I can't remember how it works, because what I'm thinking is, because I make like 1,800 and I pay like £400 in fees, so it does feel like a lot, but I'm the same in that I think, gosh, how it knows, because on Patreon, what I do every month is at the end of the month, I do a post with links to all the content I've done, just in case anyone's missed anything. And if a person is not in that tier, they can still see the post, but when they click the link, it'll say, you don't have access to this. And all of that stuff, like, I just would never be able to build a website that has that and manages it. And I just think, yeah, it's like everything, we pay a fee. And that's, it's just that service that I just won't be able to do on a website, myself. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to pay it too.
I nearly left and moved it to another site because my fees are like over £1,000 a month.
I must be wrong then with mine. I must be too low, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a platform fee and then there's a processing fee of like processing the money. So that I didn't know about when I joined. And I think that that's just worth looking at. Like, but what I love about Patreon, and I think is amazing about having a Patreon, is that if someone's one of my Patreons and they want to go join Harriet's or Emily's, it's really easy for like to be like, oh, I'll join that one as well. I'll join, and it like you build that community of the patrons that you're joining. Whereas if I had set it up on something separate, there's not that like easy access to other Patreons. So I think that for me is like that's why I stayed. And like I don't think their organization's very good either, but like I'm sure we can talk about that later on as well. But yeah, I do think again, like there's a real nice, like I had a problem with it yesterday and I got a reply straight away, which was really good. So yeah,
that was really nice. All right, so I'm going to dive into a question, and this one is basically from here on out for the rest of the live stream. You can answer it or not. So if you feel like you have something to say to it, feel free to jump in. Something that I wonder, and I'm sure some of the audience wonders, is I sometimes see people that are having this massive success on a certain platform, and it makes me wonder, well, did they bring their own audience? Like, did they already have 100,000 subscribers on Instagram or whatever? In which case, if I start this, it will not be successful for me, or you know what I mean? Like, or I see YouTube channels blow up and I think, well, I don't have the audience to bring from anywhere. So it's difficult. And that sometimes makes it harder to evaluate, is this an income stream that is going to work for me? And so I'm wondering, in general, do you remember how large your quote unquote following was, whether that be on social media or like an email newsletter you had or anything? What kind of reach did you have before you launched your Patreon? Do you remember? And do you think it matters? Do you think there's a magic number, or that you have to absolutely, basically be art famous before building a Patreon? Any thoughts?
I think it's a combination because of course all of us started. I mean, Emily, you started just before the lockdowns, and Emma, you and I started more like when everyone was more at home. I think for me, I definitely benefited from the fact that there was a really like captive audience at home, really keen to do some watercolors, and that's what we'd found with YouTube. So I think going into 2020, I had about 16,000 Instagram followers, and then and nothing else. And then YouTube began, and I think we only had like a few thousand subscribers by September. But I think that was still a really handy like chunk of people to get. We had a really good start, but I really also think for me the timing of that time of year, that specific moment in the world, made it so much easier to get a really good start and momentum at the beginning.
That makes complete sense. It was this unique situation, right, where people were at home so much more and focused on, maybe if they were lucky, they had extra time on their hands, learning, wanting to build community, wanting to learn something, a new skill. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that openly. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm quite passionate about this because I'm somebody that started with a very, very small following. And I get asked a lot, can you start this without a following? And I don't think your size of your following matters, because if you have 100 followers, but all of them want to sign up to your Patreon, that's a very successful Patreon. You know what I mean? So I launched my Patreon with about 2,000 Instagram followers. and I didn't even have 1,000 YouTube subscribers. And my goal on launch day was to get 10 patrons. I thought if I can get 10, then that's great. And I did that in the first hour. So,
Wow, that's
so
cool.
having that, you don't need to have a huge goal of hitting 100 patrons, but I would say build a following that is an engaged one. It doesn't need to be a huge one. And that's what I did. So when I wanted to launch a Patreon when my little boy was 3 months old.
Oh my goodness.
Crazy. But
Emily.
I had no job and I had no
Wow.
plans for life. And I thought, I'm going to have to get a job in Asda, which is absolutely fine. I'm happy to do it. But if I can make it work drawing, I will. So I'm sat there with this 3-month-old, like planning. And I thought, look, nobody knows who I am. So this Patreon launch is going to go very badly. So I spent 6 months growing an audience and that was my focus. So then I launched in the November and it was better. So that's, yeah, I just wanted to show that the following wasn't large. But I think I hit 100 patrons within 3 months. So
Wow.
It's amazing.
and like I say, I only had, what did I have? I had about, I got a couple more thousand on Instagram. So about 5,000 on Instagram. So yeah, you can do it with a smaller following. You don't have to have a huge following.
Yeah.
Thank you for the pep talk.
Yeah.
No, it helps because we're all at different
You can
stages.
do
So
it.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah, I think it's really good to hear as well, because like I think I had 30,000 followers when I started it, and like I genuinely said I messaged my dad and I was like, I just want to be able to cover my phone bill, because I had no money. Like I was lecturing, but that was it. Like that's all I was doing really, and I had my online shop. But with the pandemic, I just wasn't expecting people to buy prints which were like £100 when people were losing their jobs. So I was like saying to my dad, I just want to cover my phone bill, which was like 30 quid a month. So I would have needed three patrons was like my goal. But I think like, yeah, I think it's really lovely to hear that you've had that smaller following and grown that. And I think what you said was right. You need the people those engaged people, like that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have a very expensive cell phone, I think you're good now, right?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's get into the meat of your setup a little bit. How many different tiers do you have on Patreon, and what do you offer in those tiers? Anyone want to start off?
We're all just like, oh no. Mine's changed. I don't know about you, but my Patreon has gone through some changes over the years. I've had loads of tiers and I've got rid of tiers, and then I've changed it so much. That's one like kind of tip I would say if anyone that's thinking of starting a Patreon, is you might think, like you guys might be different, but I had this idea of what my Patreon was going to be when I launched it. I thought I was going to teach people how to draw, and that's what I was going to do. But then the first 10 people that joined were illustrators. So I had this panic of, oh my God, like I've got tiers for art advice and they don't even draw. So I've gone through a lot of changes over the years, but I have 5 tiers. One of them, I'm kind of hoping to close that. Like it's like hidden and like, do you know what I mean? And that's because it's a very low tier. It was like $1 tier that I did, which had loads of people in it. And I realized I was giving a lot away for $1, and it took a few people to be like, hey, you should stop doing that. And I kind of just moved all of that stuff to the £3 tier, and a lot of people moved to it, and it helped me massively. So I just have a few people still in there. Just leave them there. So I would say 4 active tiers, but there are 5.
Yeah, I've got 3 active tiers, and then there's a 4th one, which is like the £3 one, which is like almost like a buy me a coffee, it's like the basic one. But yeah, 3 active ones, and I had 3 to begin with, and then I added 1 on. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. We've got the sort of the buy me a coffee tip jar one at the bottom, which it's funny. I felt really like unsure of to do for a while. And then it's just what's been so nice with Patreon is realizing that there are so many people out there who are basically cheerleading you and saying, we see a value in what you do, even if you need showing that there's a value in what you do. So yeah, I have I guess 3 active tiers. And did you want to know sort of roughly kind of what we offer?
That'd be great. Yeah, because I think it's interesting to see how many different approaches there are and, you know, what's working for you, just as inspiration for those who are interested in making their own.
Cool. Well, I quickly realized I needed to make sure all my content was digital rather than like physically sending stuff out. I don't know if Emma or Emily, you do any like physical sending out, but I quickly was like, oh no, hang on. I just think that's going to be a huge task, and the post is a thing a lot. So so yeah, the bottom tier is close friends Instagram stories, which is lovely because that's kind of where everything began for me. I used to film I still do film my painting process, and a lot of people would find that fun to watch just for like a relaxing kind of ASMR thing, and other people wanted to learn. So it's just been able to, by turning that into a Patreon tier, I've just been able to make it better. I think I was really scared that people who had just been watching that, you know, on regular Instagram before Patreon came along might be annoyed that I'd sort of taken it away and put it behind a thing. But actually, no, it was so positive. And anyone who didn't want to pay £3 for it was cool to not have it. They didn't miss it. And the people who were happy to pay were like, yeah, this is great. And we get it even better. And then the next tier up is £8, where they get a weekly film tutorial, which is much more in depth. We do lots of topics over the course of a few weeks, and then the top tier has a live stream once a month as well. There's like loads of extra other little bits that happen, but I think that's the main crux of what I do. It's all watercolor tutorial stuff. Should probably put that in.
Thank you for that overview. And yes, if you are super interested in learning more or maybe joining our artist Patreons, they have their websites linked in the video description. So feel free to pop over and you'll see all those little nitty-gritty details.
Do you want us to say what's on
ours? Yes, please.
Yeah. I've got a sketchbook club one, so I do sketchbook tours. So I go again, like I was doing it on Instagram to begin with, like sharing through my sketchbooks, and I was like swatching materials on Instagram stories, and like that was always my most engaged stuff. Like people were like, oh, give us more, give us more, give us more. So again, it felt weird putting a paywall in front of it, but like Harriet said, I've just been able to make it better and make more, like, and be able to talk through it. Instagram's hard to do that sometimes. Whereas I can make it like I can edit and move things around, and and then they also get like a sketchbook challenge on that one, so it's like me teaching something, and then there's bonus stuff that like just gets thrown in, and then but that's kind of like the basics on that sketchbook tier. And then there's a process tier, so they get one live drawing session a month, and then there's the top tier, which is like a drawing club tier, so they get 2 extra live sessions a month. And then I've just started this year, I've started doing like a whole month of process of what I'm doing in my sketchbooks, and I'll show like all my research and my development work and what I'm doing basically, because and those have been really nice. Like both, like I get really nice feedback about them, but also they're really nice for me as well to kind of really think about what I'm doing rather than just being like bam 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 bam, what's next. So yeah.
And I think that's a really good tip from both of you to maybe look at what's working on Instagram and whether some of those would work as a lower tier for Patreon.
And mine's slightly different in that I wanted to do like you guys are doing, you know, I wanted to do the tutorials. I wanted to show people how I create characters in animation. I had like 3 months of content all planned. And then, I saw the patrons that were coming in and I was thinking, oh my God, this is not going to work. So I pivoted mine, and I'm really glad that I did, because now mine, it's kind of split. I found that more than half of my patrons were kind of just small businesses that followed me on YouTube, liked the journey of how I started. I have a lot of mums who are in a similar position where they've got babies and want to make a business and kind of found me on YouTube. So I had all these sort of, especially in the pandemic, these people that were starting businesses and wanting to make money from home, joining my Patreon to get advice and tips. And then there were people that were joining because they liked my drawings. There was kind of that split. So a lot of the content is, I do wallpapers, I do digital downloads and illustrations and things. But then I also do a lot of small business content. So I have a lot of guest speakers come on, and I do Zoom calls. So this was started in the pandemic. And it was a way to, I saw a lot of online coaches and things charging a lot. And I understand why they charge a lot, but I knew in the pandemic, people didn't have the cash. And I thought, is there a way people can pay £5 and I can pay a guest speaker to come on and talk about accounting, social media, photography. So I do that every month. I get like guest speakers on. And we've just kind of built this community of small businesses now. I can see a few people in the comments, but we do like online markets and things. So I used to get everybody on my website, and for one weekend I would just promote them for a weekend, and I just try and build small business community, and I do it all through my Patreon basically. So that wasn't the original plan at all. That was not the plan of the Patreon.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm going to go join.
You are so welcome.
See you there, Harriet.
Yeah. But I think that's really cool to hear, because that to me is also something that I see not just on Patreon, but I see in general with art businesses, right? You can go in different directions. You can do something like tutorials. I will paint you how to teach. Yes, I will teach you how to paint. And you can do things where you're more promoting your own art and the process behind it, right? And really focusing on your own art, your work as an artist, your product, and so forth. Or you can go the art business community routes of more of that business, advice. So I think it's really interesting that you have those different approaches. And it's really encouraging, because I think, especially as you said to Emily, maybe you have an idea and maybe you have to pivot once you see what people are actually looking for. I can relate to that struggle a little bit. I think I have that audience split as well, because I do these live streams, which are very much more focused on helping other artists and building that community. And then at the same time, I'm trying to open an online shop to sell my own art. And that maybe is not going to be the same person that is interested in that product. So I can relate to that.
I was just one other thing to add. I think when you are planning what you're going to have on offer in your tiers, like, don't over deliver to like I don't know about you, but I was like, I could do this, and I was like, oh, that sounds exhausting. But you can always add things. And I definitely have come up with new ideas and lovely things, and definitely been inspired by my community on Patreon of what they want. There are things they've come up with that I was like, oh yeah, okay, we'll do that. So yeah, you can always add, but I don't think it's very easy to remove stuff as much. So
that makes sense.
I think the really good bit of advice that I was given is imagine you only do have those 5. Imagine if you do have 5 patrons, you don't want to say you're going to do all this stuff for 5 people. Imagine it is just for 5 people. And then if you get more, great. And you, like Harriet said, you can add stuff in. But I definitely set mine up thinking I definitely overpromised in those early days, and did loads, but I've definitely got into a rhythm and a routine with it now. And like Harriet said, it's my audience has then inspired what I make as well. It is such a nice community on there.
Do you all find? Go ahead.
Can I just add to that point?
Yes,
because I had a really funny thing happen last year. I don't know if people know, but you can, when people leave your Patreon, they can leave a reason why.
Oh yeah.
I don't advise looking at that when you're feeling down. But every now and again, it's good to just have a nosy, just to see, And there was 1 month where somebody left. 2 people left, and they were both in the same tier. So you don't know who they are, but you know the level they were on and how much they paid. And the first person left because I posted too much. There was too much content, and it was overwhelming. I was like, okay, I do post a lot. Like I do give a lot. And the person who left on the same day in the same tier put, she doesn't post enough. And that's why so sometimes you can't win. So you have to just kind of people have different expectations. Some people like to subscribe to a Patreon and they don't even want to look at the content. They just want to like support you. There's some people that want to pay £5 a month and they want loads of content from you. So you kind of got to set your own what's the word? Do you know what I mean? Like you have to be quite confident of what it's worth, the tier, and don't feel pressure to post too much, or because not everyone will be happy.
Yeah, and don't read those. I never read those.
No, don't do it.
And so kind of picking up on what you're saying, because I'm curious whether you said, you do all the work for the tier, kind of whether there's 5 people or 100 people. Do you find that it is the same amount, or I'm assuming if it's things like where you're actually interacting with people, it does become more work as the Patreon grows. But this isn't exactly the question. What I would like to know with that in mind is if someone would like to start a Patreon, now that yours is successful, or even while you were building it, how many hours a week do you usually spend creating content for or interacting with Patreon?
I think about it all the time. Like
Yeah.
I think about it like my boyfriend gets annoyed because it's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and it's the last thing. Like I'm going to sleep, and he's like, "You're right." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't sleep because I'm thinking about this amazing thing that I'm not on Patreon." Like, I wake up and I go, "I've got to write that down," like because I'm going to do this on Patreon, and like I think about it, like it's a constant now. But but like Emily was saying, like Emily's got that amazing community. Having that community is like it's so amazing, and like I can't switch off from that because I love the community we've developed on Patreon, and like so I can't tell you exactly how many hours, but I mean I think about it all the time.
But I think that's
all
such
your
a
hours.
positive thing, because I think you've got to start, if you want to start a Patreon, your intentions must be that you're just like bursting to share a thing you're really passionate about with, whether it's 5 people like who'll listen, and then that's going to naturally mean you're just fizzing with, sometimes ideas might be a little less forthcoming, but if I'm talking about like the nuts and bolts of like the physical thing, like we do all our filming for the week on a Monday, so that's the day, Monday is filming day, and then I think maybe like physical work of like answering comments, dealing, making sure everyone's all right on the messages and all that kind of thing. Maybe like one full solid day of like a 9-hour day or something. But like Emma says, it's always like inspiration if you do a creative job or any kind of, because the great thing about Patreon is there's all sorts of different Patreons. The minute you've got a community, you're so energized from them. It's just so amazing to have people who are as invested in what you're doing as you are, that it's fizzing away all the time.
I don't really have anything else to add because I'm the same. I'm the same. It's just always on your mind. You're constantly worrying, are you doing enough? Are you doing too much? Like it's just a constant. I structure my week because I have the shop as well and all sorts of other things, and a mum, like I have to do that as well. So I do a lot of content in the first week of the month and a lot of prep in the first week. So like this whole next week will be Patreon focus really when I'm here, and I'm not here every day. So when I am here, I get a lot done in the first week, and then I tend to have a quieter second week because I've done a lot in the first week. I just schedule a lot of stuff, and then the sort of third week I tend to do, that's when I'll do my Zoom calls and my tutorials. And one of the shifts that I did about a year ago now was I used to do a tutorial, and it can be an illustration one, it can be a businessy one, it's just different each time. And I used to film it and edit it and upload it, and I found that took a long time. So now I just do them live. I just do live tutorials. I just like go live like this, spend an hour, and I don't need to edit it. And so that saved me a lot of time, and I actually enjoy doing them more. And then the final week of the month, I do send physical rewards. So every other month I send them. And that's where that the kind of, so every week is a lot of work for Patreon, you know. Yeah.
This has nothing to do with Patreon, but that's also why I do live stream. Like seriously, because I was completely like the editing. I'm like, it would take me a month or two, you know, to ever get anything out. And I'm like, well, this is so pointless. Like it's just sitting there and I can't get to it. And this is perfect. So I think that is a secret kind of tip. Seriously, it makes it so much more fun for community. It's more interactive and you're done. Like I have to do a lot of prep. Yes. You know, I find all the artists, I communicate, I prep, but then the 1 hour, 1.5, and it's done. And I get to chat with artists, you know, watching. So I think it's very, very cool, whether you do Patreon or not, to include some live streams in your work.
Yeah, it's very important for me to like always say that Ant, my husband, is doing all of that for me, because that's a whole other person working on my Patreon.
That's amazing.
I know, I'm like, well, he is a wedding photographer, and so he, like me in the pandemic, were like, oh my god, all our work's disappeared. So he had these cameras,
and the skills, and wow, that's a good setup. Alrighty, so we have about 15-ish minutes left. So what I'm going to do now, before I get through a few more questions, I want to put a question up here for everyone watching. So please, the comments are super active right now, but I haven't heard a lot of questions. So if you have a burning question for the artists about how to run a Patreon or set it up for artists, please start adding your questions to the comments now. I'm going to pick one more question from my prep here until then. So I think this is a good one. For artists interested in creating this income stream, what do you think is the hardest thing and the best thing about being on Patreon?
The best thing is the community. Like, oh my gosh, my patrons have like met up in real life and like gone on holiday together and gone drawing together. And like, I have a creative consultant, and she asked me last year, like, what was the best thing that you did last year? And I was like, well, the best thing I did was that my patrons there, and that those people have met in real life and like made those friendships and connections. And like for me, like that for me is like, that is it. Like I can't get any more like proud of them. Like it feels like I burst, because like they're making their own stuff now. Like they can't, you know, they come and they make their own work, and then they tag me on Instagram and I get to see it, and that's amazing. And like that for me is the best. Like the hardest is the editing, which I'm really jealous Harriet has someone doing that for her. And I'm not as organized as either of you, so I've got nothing scheduled and nothing filmed. And so that's the rest of my month is like my month is chaos. But I don't. My boyfriend said like I like thrive in chaos, so like that's fine.
That works. Yeah. I definitely agree with Emma that the community is amazing. I have a Discord as part of my Patreon, where everyone gets to upload photos of their paintings that we've been working on that week, and I'm there to like give tips and critiques. And every time I go through it, I just get so energized from it. It's amazing to see. But I will also say, as a lifelong freelancer, Patreon is probably the nearest thing to a monthly salary. I'm not going to say guaranteed monthly salary, but on the whole, all being well, touch wood, that it's amazing for that. And and the very fact that as an artist you can be having this much autonomy in getting paid for the work you want to do, but that is obviously all down to the amazing community who found you and support you. So it all comes back to them, really. I'm trying to think of a bad bit. Maybe come back to me on that.
I know, I'm sat here thinking, is there a harder thing? But with like anything you do, there's times where it's hard. But I can't think of anything better than people choosing to support you to just create the things you're going to create. You know what I mean? I just don't think there's anything better. There's the hard bit is the growing, and I think we all, like we've said before, we started at a time where people were they were at home, they needed to consume content, and I really do feel like I got onto Patreon just before, like, you know,
Yeah,
It did. It jumped so high. And like I say, I'm somebody that's mine's going down now. And I don't know how long. I would love it to go back up. But every month I'm just happy for where it's at, and I just hope it carries on. I'll keep going until the last patron's there. But yeah, no, I can't complain about it. It's been amazing. I've been able to be with my son, and I didn't have to go back to work because of it. So I'll never. Yeah, I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. We actually got quite a few audience questions now, so we're going to try to get through a few of these. Bazuta Art Studio asks, should you have a backlog of content already uploaded before launching your Patreon? And if so, how much?
I'm so sorry to jump on in this, but
I don't know if this has changed.
Why? Because I've launched obviously earlier than you guys, but when I launched, you couldn't upload any content to your Patreon before you hit launch. I don't know if that's changed now, but when I launched, you couldn't have any. So what I planned loads of content, and the day before I was going to upload everything so that when people joined, they would have all this content. And then I found out that you can't do that. Well, when I launched anyway, you couldn't. You had to launch and then start uploading content. So what I did, fun story, I decided to launch in the middle of the night before I told everybody I was, just so I could upload stuff. But the problem I had was that somebody joined at 1 o'clock in the morning, because I don't know where they were in the world. I don't know how time zones work, but they obviously got notified that I'd launched this Patreon and joined. And then they got charged again. So my first ever patron paid twice. And it was just the most stressful first day of Patreon for me. But it's just because I wanted to upload content. So I don't know if they've changed that now, but yeah.
I mean, the other way of asking that question, I guess, is, are you saying launch Patreon with loads of ideas in your back pocket of what you're going to do for the first 6 months? I think I certainly did. I think you do need to have a realistic sense that you can sustain the thing you're offering. So just to be okay, I'm going to teach watercolor, might start with beginners and work our way up. And I think I can do that, weekly watercolor tutorials for a while. So I certainly I was not as organized as Emily to have actual filmed stuff ready. But I definitely had a vague sense of a plan of a sustainable amount of content.
I can't remember. I really can't remember. But I do remember signing it up. I definitely launched it secretly, so I didn't tell anyone I'd launched it, and then someone joined, and I remember calling my dad, someone's joined, I haven't even put it up. Where have they come from?
Emily's first patron as well. 1 in the morning.
I messaged him and I was like, how did you find me? But I would say that once people join on that tier, you can't then edit the price of that tier. So that's good to know as well. Make sure your prices are that's the price you do want to charge before people join.
Yeah, and what I was saying before, Emily, I didn't want to speak for you, but when you were sharing, then I saw this question. It made me think, well, maybe don't have too much ready to go, because if you've put in all this time and then you realize your Patreons are looking for something completely different, they want to support you, but not with this, it would be a huge waste of time if you'd have, 6 months of work ready to go. All right, so let's pull up the next question. Beth Spencer with a super cute puppy asks, any tips for marketing your Patreon?
I have YouTube and Instagram, and the content I'm putting out on those is very similar to what I'm putting out on Patreon. So I'm going to have people, there's definitely going to be a crossover. So I don't hammer it. I really don't like constant. I'm very awkward with that kind of thing as well, but I do have a nice introductory video on YouTube explaining the Patreon, and then every now and then I'll talk about it. And I always actually thank my patrons for their support on the YouTube videos, because that support enables us to actually keep doing the YouTube channel and things. So it's always there as a low-lying thing, but for me it's I guess occasional mentions when it's relevant on my other social media platforms where the audience would be interested, but nothing more than that, really.
I'm really bad. Like, I'm awful. Like, if someone even invited me on somewhere to be like, come promote your stuff, I'd be like, okay. And then I'd be like, let's talk about your stuff. Like, I'm really,
but your
Emma,
community, right? It's working out for you in that sense, because I think you're saying the community is so engaged and connected with each other, and they're posting, you know, what they learned and what they
you
painted.
share
And
their work, which is always, I find that really engaging. On when I watch your Instagram and I see the tons and tons of reposts of everybody, that I think is so powerful. When you're going, look what a great time we're having, and you can have it too.
I do think the live calls are like the way mine has grown so much, because I do 3 live calls a month, and then people share what they've made. Like that, I think having that live element does really help. Like, but I watched one of Emily's Instagram, because Emily, I didn't follow you before, but I'm really glad I found you through this. But I watched one of your reels, and I loved that you showed like I was like, oh, I could do that, and I was like, I'm not going to, because I'm really bad at like doing stuff like this. But I loved that you shared that you'd been in a live call with your patrons, because I was like, ooh, what was that like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found I have to keep talking about it because, well, I don't know, I obviously do YouTube, and I have a link under my YouTube channel, and at the start of each YouTube video I'll like welcome my new patrons I've had that week, but I'm a much smaller account, and not many people see my stories now, because Instagram's just I was looking at not even 500 people watching my stories. It's it's not, I'm not getting much, and the same with YouTube, not many people watching. So I found that I send an email like once a month, like a newsletter of like what I'm up to. I put my like schedule for Patreon in there, and then every few days on Instagram, just talking about what I'm doing, because I'm usually doing a Zoom call, or I'm drawing something for Patreon, and I'm just constantly just snapping it on Instagram. I hope it's not annoying, because I don't want it to be like, oh, she's promoting that Patreon again. But I think I've found the right balance of, I do a lot of free content, I do a lot of things you can watch for free, but I also want to promote the little bit of extra. If you like my free stuff, this is just the little bit of extra, and that I can mentally, like, I feel all right promoting myself doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's hard. You feel like, oh, I don't want to do it. But I think what I found that helped is, instead of thinking, oh, I don't want to promote myself, I don't want to do that, I think, no, I've got so much content on my Patreon now. I've got 4 years of monthly Zoom calls that if someone joins for £5, they have 4 years of access. And I just think, I can help people, and if I don't post about it, they're not going to know that it's there to help, and that's what helps me mentally do it. Do you know what I mean?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
just sort of flipping it.
I actually want to take the last few minutes and squeeze this in. I just remembered, Emily and Emma, you both gave me a little bit of visual, and I'm just picking up on this because.
Oh, I can't remember what I said.
That's okay. No, Emma, because Emma, you're saying you don't really do a lot of like promoting, but you have this incredible setup on your website. So if someone makes it there, they actually, hold on, let me get the right setup here. They will actually, I thought it was really helpful. So let me just bring that up here, and maybe you can say a little about this.
This was like my, I know you've not put it up yet, but this was like my COVID. I had COVID over Christmas, and I made this.
Oh, is it showing?
Sorry, I don't see it.
I can't see it.
You can't see it. Okay, well, that is not helpful, is it?
I can describe it if you want. I can describe it.
Oh, that's such a bummer. It says I'm sharing it.
I made I'm part of the Draw Brighton patron, which it's for life drawing, which is amazing. And they had a contents page, so you can so this is on my website, and a patron has no organization at all. Like, I used to have a pinned post.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is amazing.
I used to have a pinned post at the top of my patron, which had everything in. Like, this is all the stuff, but it was still really complicated, especially Emily and Harriet, you must find this after 3-4 years, like what do you do with it? So I made this contents page. So I did actually sit and update it last night, but I hadn't updated it last month. But so you can go on, and then if you click on like a sketchbook tour one, you'll see all the sketchbook tours for the last 3 years. So then you can go and, like Emily, you were saying, like if someone clicks on one of those and they're not on the right tier, it'll prompt then people to upgrade. But like this is so helpful even for me, because
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I mean, yeah, it was yeah, I mean, I did this. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything.
How long did that take to do?
Like ages, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
but see, this is super enticing. You know, to me, just the visual preview of it really makes you want to join, and you can see all the value that's there. So that's super cool.
That's so brilliant. Like I said, I have all these like Zoom calls I've done, and I have them on a pinned post at the top of my thing, and there's like 30 links there, and obviously they look good, but I want patrons to have like a tab of like where I can make full so you can see mine are all linked there, but it would be so much better if you could just see all of the content. Yeah,
so I emailed Patron at Christmas and said, are you gonna, before I do this, before I'm mad, make my own, are you going to do it? Because I sent them Draw Brighton's one, because I think that's an incredible one as well. Said, are you going to make something like this? And they were like, no, we've got no plans. And I was like, fine, I'll do it myself.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's no organisation really otherwise, unless you do. This is amazing though, Emily. Yours is much more. Yours looks really nice. Mine looks horrible.
It does work. It does work, and people. This is the pinned post, so people can find it, but. It would be great to have. You've inspired me, so I'm going to look into that. Brilliant, honestly, really good.
Yeah, that is probably the main bit of feedback I get, is I've been really trying to work out how to make everything as easy as possible to find. I tend to have private YouTube playlists that I link to because mine's a lot of it's being filmed content, and we upload it on YouTube and then put it across to Patreon. So that's been helpful, but yeah, it's not as pretty as those. So I gotta work on that, or get Ant to work on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Can I send in mine as well?
Yeah, honestly, I love it. I'll tell them that.
Oh, Emily, send me a message though if you're going to do it, and I'll give you some. Or Harriet, if you want to, on that, because that was like that's a steep learning curve.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's so kind. Thank you. I want to thank you all. We're already at an hour, and I promised Harriet. She said she can do this. No. It's perfect. No, so
carry on without me.
We got everything in. No. If the three artists that are participating here, if you do have the time later, you can pop back to the YouTube video. I'll make sure that the live stream chat is still there. So if you see any questions that you want to answer after the fact, feel free. I know everyone would appreciate it. There were quite a few questions that we didn't get to, but I hope this was so helpful for everyone watching. I really appreciate how honest and vulnerable and open you were with all your details. And I hope that if anyone watching is going to try this, that you can, I believe you can make it happen, but it sounds like it's a lot of work, like anything in the creative field, if you want to build a solid income stream. Any last thoughts from you three before we wrap it up?
Just if you're thinking of making one, just do it. Like there's literally no risk. There's no risk. There's zero. There's just film it on your phone and start. Like do it. Yeah.
And go on Patreon and look at other content creators who have Patrons and see what they're doing. And yeah, because there's so many amazing people doing really creative and different things on Patreon. That's one of its strengths, is it supports all sorts of different creators. So get ideas from other people.
Yeah, I agree. If it's in a thought in your mind right now, just go for it. Like put a plan together and go for it. I don't want to plug a video, but I'm going to. I recorded this video. It's one of my first videos I ever did, and I look at it and I cringe a little bit, but it's my highest viewed video, so it's doing well. But it's how to launch a Patreon. But I filmed it like I didn't have many followers, but I had like 100 patrons, you know, so I was like right at the start, and I look back at it, and even though I cringe, I think, no, she listen to what she says, like she, you know, so if you want to watch that, please do.
Is that on your YouTube, Emily?
Yeah, it's if you go on my YouTube and like search the highest, it's like the only one it's got like 80,000 views. It's the only one. Must have some good keywords. I don't know.
Feel
I get
free.
every single day I get a comment on that video to say like,
Wow.
oh wow, that's really helped. So there is some use. I haven't watched it back. I don't. It makes me cringe. But
No, but you know, I think yes, please go watch that video, and Emily, feel free to pop it into the comments under the
thank
video
you.
later. You can do a direct link. But in general, this is something that I found with my YouTube channel too, and maybe this is kind of a good takeaway for Patreon, is that it's nice, especially if you have help and have this incredible production value, but so often people are after the connection and the content, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, I bought this fancy camera and this, but it's the same with my channel, Emily. Like one of the first videos I made that I think is just like garbage from, you know, just the look of it, and it's just bad. It every day it's like hundreds of views. It's the only one. So whatever that is enough, because the content I'm giving is so helpful, you know? So yeah, we all want to be these amazing, you know, Hollywood like production companies.
Like
a lot of us are by ourselves, you know, in the bedroom or something.
You can do it all on your phone these days.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is often enough, and you can always improve long term and get better gear and improve your skills. But yeah, your phone is good enough if you're able to bring across value and authenticity.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed it, and I learned so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today. What a great conversation. And if you think you might not be able to get enough, we do have 9 more episodes that are already up and available. We have all sorts of business topics that help you with building your art or illustration income streams. We're talking about things like art licensing. We're talking about very specific fields like picture book illustration. Have a peek at my channel. I think you'll find something else that interests you.